Hello everyone and welcome to today's Girls on Track UK webinar brought to you by Motorsport UK. A big thank you to all of you that have given up your time to join us this evening, and of course to our lovely guests who have also volunteered their time to spend with us today. I am Ariana Bravo and I currently co-host the Autosport Formula One podcast, and I also co-hosted the Driven by Diversity podcast, which you can find on all the usual podcast platforms. And I'm also very fortunate to host some of these amazing sessions for Girls on Track UK. I took part in some of the Meet the Women of Formula One sessions that we recently did, which you can find on YouTube if you missed any of them. And today I'm very excited because for those of you that don't know, this week, June the 1st till June the 7th in the UK is National Volunteers Week, in which we celebrate all the amazing contributions that volunteers make. And Girls on Track UK had the wonderful idea of hosting today's webinar, giving us an opportunity to speak to some incredible volunteers within the motorsport industry and a chance for you guys to ask whichever questions you might have as well. So today we're joined by 5 ladies. We have Chloe Jones, who is a scrutineer, Dot Uota, who is clerk of the course and a marshal, Cheryl Lynch, who is a steward, Nadine Lewis, who volunteers as a marshal, and Sue Sanders, who is also clerk of the course rather. Now, as you can see, these ladies volunteer across really exciting areas, so there's going to be so much to discuss. But before we get into that, just a few housekeeping bits as usual. The session is being recorded, just to be conscious of that. And most importantly, these sessions are for your benefit. We want you to ask questions that you have burning inside. I will lead the session for the majority, and then we will bring in any questions you have. So make sure you use the Q&A function at the bottom of the chat, and then I'll get through as many as I can as the conversation goes on. But I don't want to waste too much more time because we have lots of people to get through and lots of interesting stories to share. So let's kick off with Chloe. Chloe, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Wonderful. How are you today?
I'm all right. I'm a little bit sunburnt, so it's
making the most of the weather. Now, Chloe's actually joining us while she's on holiday as well. So this is the dedication that we have amongst the ladies with us today. So as I said, Chloe, you are a scrutineer. To kick off, can you just give everyone an overview of what your role actually entails, what you actually do as a scrutineer for anyone that might not be that familiar?
Yeah, so we do kind of a lot of things. So it depends on the event. We basically do the pre-event check, so making sure the car is safety is okay, going through the clothing, helmets, these are all up to standard. On event, so while they're racing, we'll then continue the check to check the car is nothing's falling off it, people are still wearing the same equipment. And then after the event, we'll do kind of like post-event checks again, making sure basically all the cars and the teams and people are complying with our regulations.
Very interesting. I'm sure everyone that's a motorsport fan is familiar with your role to an extent as well. Now, we actually had a question sent in, which I'm going to put to you straight away, just for whoever it is that sent it in. Someone has actually asked, as a scrutineer, how long does it take to inspect each car on a typical race weekend? Is that an answer you can give us, or does it vary massively depending on the event?
I think it depends on the event and it depends on the vehicle as well. Because if you're in say a certain discipline, you get to know the cars, the competitors, you tend to know the cars inside out. So when you come to an event, you already know the car and you can do the basic checks as normal because you already know it. You might be very good friends with the competitor and they might be down the road and like that. So it's a hard one because it all does depend on the car. But normally, like I would say above like 10 minutes, it depends, but I do like to have a good check because it's fannies you like to have a look in kind of thing.
And how long have you actually been in your role as a scrutineer?
I started in 2017, so I was 18 at the time, and I got my license when I was 20.
Okay.
So I've been doing it since then. Obviously, the pandemic hit, which stopped obviously play for quite a bit. But before that, I did a lot. I did Wales Rally GB, historic Formula One cars. I got out there to everything during those times. So brilliant.
And can you talk us through the journey to becoming a scrutineer? Was it something that you always wanted to volunteer at, or is it something that as you got older and you maybe stumbled across it, or it was recommended to you? How did you actually find your way into that volunteering role?
Mine came from my university. So I
Okay.
was a uni student at Myerscough, and they sent students every year to Wales Rally GB to help out and assist. And in my first year, I got offered the chance to go. Absolutely loved it. I worked with some brilliant people. And basically from then on, I was like, I just wanted to get involved in it. So I went back the year after again through uni, a bit more comfortable because I'd known some people, and I met my mentor who said, right, I want to put you through the training, because I was a bit unsure what to actually do and how to get involved fully. My mentor at the time assisted me and kind of took me through my training. So for me, it started off with my uni, and
Hmm.
it of those just I'll go and see what it's about, and it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did.
That's what we love to hear. We've had a question come in from Alex who's asked, what did you study at university and what is your current full-time job? Is it related to the scrutineering?
So I studied motorsport management and logistics, so 3-year course, got a degree, and then I now work at Motorsport UK with Cheryl that you'll speak to later on. So I do race, speed and kart. So it's a little bit different because I always was involved in cross country.
Hmm.
So I came from off road. So now I work on tarmac and circuits, which is nice because scrutineering brought that to me. I never had the opportunity beforehand to go to a circuit, and scrutineering gave me that opportunity to go and see all these cars and all different circuits around the UK.
Yeah, really hands-on experience. Now, in terms of the qualification and the license that you had to obtain, for anyone listening that might be interested in following in your footsteps, can you talk us a bit more through that process? Is it challenging? Is there any advice that you would have for people that might be looking to take that qualification and license?
So obviously when you start out, you get a trainee license. You can go and support events and you work with all the other qualified scrutineers. You then obviously through Motorsport UK, you get like a book that you start signing off with your signatures kind of thing to prove you've done X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're fully qualified, you work through this book. The book is very good. It takes you through everything that you need to, and all scrutineers have obviously already been through it. So if you ask a question to anyone, they can answer it. And then obviously you send it off to Motorsport UK and they give you a license.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice would be to talk to as many scrutineers as possible. They're very friendly and they have so much experience. You'll be interested in what some of these people have to say, what they've seen, the tricks and stuff like that. They're brilliant people. They will share it with you, and just talk to as many people. If you can get on events and just be near these people and watch how they work, it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, that's really good advice. As we say time and time again in these webinars, networking and making connections is essential in this industry. I'm kind of getting sick of hearing myself say that, I think. Before we let you go, because obviously we don't want to eat into too much of your holiday, looking back at your time as a scrutineer, what would you say is one of your highlights? What really stands out to you over the last few years of your role?
My highlight would be meeting someone, my best friend, that was my mentor at the time through scrutineering. We now scrutineer at events together. And
Oh.
best thing for me, because you meet a long-term friend. It's not just people you work with. You get these relationships with people. So we did Wales Rally GB together. So every year we'd spend a week together, and it would just be the most amazing fun, making memories, doing what you love in the sport, but with your best friend. And
Yeah.
honestly, can't get anything better than motorsport with your friends.
I love that. That's a good memory. That's one of the best ones I've heard. Right, we will let you go. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Of course, everyone that is listening, if you have any other questions, head over to the Girls on Track UK Facebook page, pop them there. We can make sure they get through to Chloe, and I'm sure we will be able to get you responses. But thank you so much for giving up your time. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you guys for sending in questions as well. Next up, I'm going to introduce Dot, who, as I said, is clerk of the course and a marshal. Dot, I'm going to start with a similar sort of question to you. What does your role entail, high level? How would you describe it if you were explaining it to our audience?
The easiest way to describe it, just a summary, is the clerk of the course is basically responsible for an event or a race meeting. So, from the start of, whether it's practice up until, 30 minutes after the appeal time is over. So right from the start, right to the end, clerk of the course is responsible for all aspects of a race meeting, but in conjunction with, the marshals, scrutineers, timekeepers, and the stewards.
And have you always been a motorsport fan? Is that what led you into volunteering in this role?
I have. My mum used to call me Speedy Gonzales. I was a petrol head from I can't even remember, from when I was really young. And I started marshalling in 2000 and became a clerk of the course in 2011. I think it was 2011, 2012.
And how did you initially get into marshalling, and what was it that then made you want to also continue to become clerk of the course? What was that journey for you?
I volunteered, you volunteer through your various clubs, and you go, all different, whether it's your local circuit or other circuits, you attend training days, and I thought next best thing is, okay, progression, try and become a clerk of the course. So I became a clerk of the course for race, and also I'm a probationary clerk for speed and for rallycross.
Oh wow, okay, that's very interesting. And what you said, you were always a motorsport fan. What is your first sort of memory of motorsport then?
There are just so many, but it's like when people say vroom, vroom, you just see things going. It's like, yeah, it's the sounds, it's the smells, it's the atmosphere, the camaraderie, the teams. Yeah, that for me, that's what did it for me.
And this is something that we're going to touch on in more detail when I bring in the other ladies towards the end of the hour. But as we know, motorsport is a traditionally very male-dominated industry. I can see you smirking. And you've just mentioned the fact that actually the welcoming feel that you had is something that really appeals to you. Do you feel that despite the fact that it's a male-dominated industry, that isn't something that really even comes into it when you're in your role, and it's all very much you're in it together and you're there to get a job done?
It's, from my perspective, anything I do is a level playing field, and everybody I work with, everybody is treated equally. Doesn't matter whether you're male, whether you're female, as long as you can get the job done, job done.
And there you have it for any girls or ladies in the chat right now who might be doubting or feeling a little bit anxious about entering the industry. Pretty concrete view there on making it into the industry. Have you faced any challenges though since your time in motorsport? It doesn't have to be linked to gender or anything like that, but looking back, are there any things that you're thinking, oh, that was actually quite an obstacle to overcome, that you can now look back on and give advice for anybody that could encounter similar?
No 2 days are ever the same, and motorsport is dangerous. I've been witness to, unfortunately, sort of the bad side of it, sort of fatalities. But at the end of the day, motorsport is dangerous, but we all go in to motorsport because we love the sport. We take the rough with the smooth, we take the good things with the bad things. Challenges, you get through challenges. You get challenges in every walk of life. So
We also had a question that was sent in ahead of this evening's session, and somebody has asked, how important is it to know multiple languages? Do you find that in your role that is a benefit, or is it something that people don't need to be put off by if they don't know many languages?
It hasn't been an obstacle, to be perfectly honest with you. It does help when you've got somebody especially when you've got like an international meeting, you've got international teams, it does help when somebody can speak, you know, a different language. But in the mainstream, it doesn't restrict, or there's no obstacle to what we're doing without a second language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And as a clerk of the course, what characteristics do you feel are most important? That's another question that we got sent in. What are the things that are most important to have quality wise, characteristic wise, to be successful and to
You've got to be firm. You've got to be able to manage. You've got to be diplomatic. Yeah, I think those are the main, and also you've got to know, you know, Motorsport UK, I don't know if you can see it, you know, they're the blue book.
Yeah, we can see it.
Everything is, we are guided by everything in Motorsport UK's yearbook. So as long as you know your regulations, if you don't know, there's always somebody that you can ask, not a problem. Easy
yeah,
peasy.
so don't be afraid to ask for help and
Correct.
raise your hand.
Correct.
Now, linked to that, somebody else also sent a question. I'm really sorry, I don't have a name for these questions because they were sent in ahead of time. But somebody's actually asked, are there options to volunteer where you don't need to know anything about engineering or mechanical topics? And that, of course, is open to everyone on the panel when I get to you guys as well. But as soon as I'm with you, Dot, in the roles that you do, are engineering and mechanical skill sets or knowledge essential?
Not essential, because people that I work with, especially the scrutineers that I work with, will tell, I'll just say anything technical just goes over my head, and I'm on the phone, you know, either to a scrutineer or a timekeeper, or, you know, a racing driver, just to get their what they think about certain things, or, you know, if they, when they start going into sort of slip diffs and blah blah blah, it's like no, you know, it's like, you don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be technically orientated to become a clerk of the course. It helps, but it's not essential. Important. Yeah,
perfect. And I think that's an important point more widely about motorsport, because I know that a lot of potential fans get put off by some people in motorsport who are exceptionally technical, and for them that's what the beauty of the sport is. But it's not essential. We can all enjoy and engage with whichever series might be of your choice without knowing every single tiny engineering detail, because I certainly don't either, and here I am blagging it. Jot, thank you so much for giving us that quick chat. I'm going to jump over to Cheryl now, who is a steward, and I'll bring you back in a little bit too. Cheryl? Hello, you're next up. I feel like I'm on some sort of game show or something where I'm just bringing the different contestants through. So as a steward, starting with the same question I've asked the other ladies, could you just talk us through how you would describe your role, and maybe even what a typical day would involve, if that even exists?
Okay, so I actually deal mainly with international, which is slightly different from Motorsport UK, so there are different regulations. Ultimately, the stewards are in overall charge of the event. So internationally, it's slightly different to the UK, but it's dealing with incidents, which whereas DOT would usually in the UK would deal with them. So they would come to the stewards at an international event, and there's a panel of stewards. You will have a chair, and then you will have two accompanying, so there's a total of three of you. Some championships may have driver stewards that give advice to the stewards. So you would deal with incidents, you would deal with any technical non-conformities that are presented to you. So very, very similar to the role that DOT does, but at the next level. So in the UK at national events, the stewards are there to oversee and to support the clerk of the course, whereas internationally they take more of a leading role.
Okay, and considering that you work in more of an international field, do you find that languages hold more importance for you, or would you echo what Dot said, that it's not mandatory, it's not essential, but nice to have?
It's not mandatory or essential. That internationally the motorsport language is English. But I've worked with many people that have a vast array of language skills, which is I wish I had their ability.
Yes, same. I really wish I could speak multiple languages, and it's something that wish I'd paid more attention in school, but here we are.
Mm.
Now, looking at your role, can you talk us through how you got to where you are? Because obviously we have spoken before and you've had an interesting journey and some amazing accomplishments along the way. So can you share the journey that you shared with me the other day, just for everybody on the call?
Okay, so I was not passionate about motorsport, didn't even really know it existed when I was younger. I've worked with Motorsport UK, then MSA, since I was 18. So I've been there quite a few decades now. I've been in my current role, so I'm currently the race, speed and kart executive. So I'm the sporting executive looking after the disciplines. And since 2006, we took on Rallycross, and we had the European Rallycross Championship come back over as a candidate event to the European Championship in 2009. And following on from that, I became the first female representative on the FIA Off-Road Commission, representing the UK, and was pushed by the president of the commission to steward, which in those days I couldn't do. Because of an employee of the ASN, as in Motorsport UK, the regional governing body. Ultimately, I was told I either had to go and steward or something else would have to happen, and maybe a new representative would have to be found for the UK. So my chief executive at the time did agree. So I started on my stewarding role back in 2010. So just to put that into slight context, is in my role, I work with what is now the Learning and Development team in training our stewards and training our clerks of the course. So I've gone about it completely the opposite way. I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunities I've had, and I love my involvement. It's as everybody else on this call is going to say, you're joining a family. And as such, there will be people that you will work with that maybe you'd rather not, but in the main, they're lovely people. We've all got the same passion, I was fortunate to have the opportunity. The president of my commission wanted to put forward an all-female stewarding panel where the Rallycross had gone to world status, and in 2016, I think it was, we had the first all-female FIA World Championship stewarding panel, and I was very fortunate to chair that panel.
Incredible.
And again, very, very well received. We were well received by the competitors, and there have been times where there's been challenges. I think subsequently the challenges are my own. They're not what other people have forced me into, because it's questioning my own abilities. It's overcoming the view that you think people have a view. I don't think it's necessarily a female issue. I think it's whether you're male or female. I think certain people will have the same concerns. You want to do the best job you can to the very best ability and to be received in the best possible way.
And how have you overcome those challenges of the self-doubt or the view that people have a view of you? Because of course everyone has that mindset at a time. Sometimes it's magnified in the motorsport industry or industries that are slightly more like niche and specialized. But what have you done yourself to be able to overcome that and to be able to push past it in order to succeed in the roles that you are in?
Take a deep breath and carry on doing it. I'm very fortunate, as with again everybody else that's involved, that you have that support network. I've known Sue for very, very many years. I've known about her involvement and what she's done. So I have leaned on Sue. I've also, I've been at an event, presented with a technical issue and being told that we had to work something a certain way and not being comfortable with it. So actually phoned one of our senior stewards in the UK who was on another foreign event and said, this is my problem, what do you think? So it's having that support network and having the support of the people you're working with.
That's brilliant. And I think that that's a testament to the volunteering community that all of you represent right now. And for anyone that's tuned in right now, I hope that reassures you that you would be joining an incredibly supportive and caring group of people. Now, looking at your time as a steward, what would you say you find most interesting about the role? What is it that really like gets you going?
The whole thing of being at an event, you know, from start to finish, you know, it's just that involvement. It's having that the dealings with the people, whether they be competitors, whether they be happy or angry, and it's trying to help everybody enjoy what is a fantastic sport. You know, as the same thing would be for Dot, that you sometimes have to give really awful decisions, and it's all about the way you do it. I have recently stewarded in the UK in the last couple of years. I stewarded on a karting panel for our British Kart Championships, and my aim of the game was as high a percentage as possible, everybody to walk out the stewarding room with a smile on their face, and other than one or two, that happened. And it's not degrading the status of who you are, but it's about dealing with people on that basis, firm but fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring Nadine in now. Nadine, would you like to join me as well now? Now, Nadine is also a marshal. So, of course, we have had a little bit of detail about how marshalling works, what the role entails. But Nadine, I would like to talk to you about your journey into the role, because I've spoken to all of you ladies offline as well. And your journey in is also really interesting because it started at uni. And a lot of the ladies listening may also be going to university or be a similar sort of age range. So can you talk us through that path that led you into marshalling?
Okay, not quite at uni. I used to watch Formula One with my dad.
And your first, one of your memories is a particularly brilliant one that I'm jealous of.
So I used to watch it on the telly. He used to work away during the week, so the only time I got to see him was on a Sunday, sat in front of the telly, watching the Grand Prix. So that's kind of how I got into motorsport. I'd never been to an event or a circuit before. The first event that I actually went to was the Donington Grand Prix when it was wet. I went on the qualifying day, which wasn't wet, with my dad, and then my mum and dad went on the Sunday to watch the race. And I sat at home glued to the telly, and had to tell them all about it when they came home, because they couldn't hear the commentary, couldn't see any TV screens, had no clue what was going on because the weather was just so atrocious. And so I had to wait for them hour and a half away to come home for me to tell them exactly what had happened in the race. And have always been, since then, I guess, interested in motorsport, but only really ever thought about Formula One. Didn't really know anything else. Didn't really see anything else on the telly. Didn't really know anything about any other kind of motorsport. And a friend of mine, she actually heard it being talked about on a local radio station. It was a marshal being interviewed by somebody on the radio, and they gave a phone number, and she took the number down and said, "This is something you'd be interested in." And I was like, "I'm not going to be interested in doing anything like that. I haven't got time. I'm working. When am I going to be able to do this?" And she said, "Just phone the number. Just phone the number." So I phoned, and they said, "Would you like to come to a taster day?" Okay, what's one of those? Well, just come down for the day on a Saturday. Here's some dates. Which date works for you? Sorted a date out. And I went to Alton Park, which is my local circuit, and got taken on a taster day. And the taster day at the time was run by a gentleman called Cliff Hammond, who unfortunately is no longer with us. But he had been marshalling for a long time at that stage. And he took us on a tour of the circuit, took us to different marshals' posts, introduced us to different people. And if things happened, so while the cars were out practicing, explained what was going on, explained about the flags, explained what all the different people were doing around the circuit. And then in the afternoon, I got to go out on post. And my first experience was a TVR Tuscan. Came off. I was on the straight after the first corner, so on Avenue, if people know Alton Park, on the straight just after the first corner, and the TVR Tuscan managed to lose it coming out the corner straight into the barrier. People I was with ran towards the car, which I thought, well, I suppose I better follow, because I didn't know what else to do. So I followed them, managed to fall over on the way, stood up again, carried on. got to where the car was, and the driver had got out, and he'd climbed over the barrier, and he was saying it's on fire, which I thought, well, I can't see any flames, but okay, it may be underneath, can't see. So the people that I were with climbed over the barrier and went to deal with the car. Driver came and sat with me and then said, I don't feel very well. At which point I thought, that's not good. So I just thought, well, I can talk to somebody. I have no idea what to do with the car, but at least I can talk to this poor person who's managed to hit the barrier. So I told him to take his helmet off. I told him to just sit still and people would come and help shortly, and just kept talking to him. And I did ask him his name. I can't remember what it was now, but I did ask him his name and all of those kind of first aid things that you just think of off the top of your head, just to keep him talking. As it turned out, he'd actually hit the barrier and set off his onboard extinguisher, which was why he was covered in extinguishant, which is why he thought he was on fire. But anyway, that was the reason. But that was it. I was like, oh my goodness, can I do this again? This is great. Driver was fine. Car they sorted out, and then stayed on post for the afternoon. And I don't remember anything else happening. That's the only thing that actually happened while I was on post. There would have been other things, but it was a while ago. But I literally was like, when can I come back and do this again? Because this is great. And some of the questions I asked was, how often do I have to do this? You know, thinking I work 5 days a week. I was studying to be an accountant at the time. And I thought, I'm studying and I'm working, you know, I can't give up all my time. And they're like, well, maybe 5 or 6 days a year. And I was like, really? Is that all? And they're like, yeah, if you can do more, that'd be great. If you can't, that's fine. You know, when you can, whatever. I was like, oh, great, where do I sign? So I guess that was it, me getting into motorsport. That's how I got in.
And would you say that for people that may be looking to follow you in your footsteps and get into marshalling as well, that time requirement is still as flexible as it was when you joined? Because I know other people may also be thinking, oh, I don't actually have the time, but I would love to get my foot in the door. Is it still that flexible?
Absolutely. We basically look at it in the sense that the more you can do, the more experience you will gain. So it's entirely up to you what you can do and what you're wanting to get out of it. If you want to progress, if you want to get more experience and do other things, then you'll have to put a bit more time in. But that's down to an individual. It's also down to a person what they want to do, because there's all the different disciplines of motorsport. So speed, kart, hill climb, rally, all of those different things, as well as race. So some people might do different disciplines on different weekends, which you can mix and match. And depending on how involved you want to get and where you want to go. So if you wanted to go to the British Grand Prix, for example, you'd have to do a certain number of events in the year before you apply. So that's part of the application process. You have to be a certain grade, so you have to have already got so much experience before you can even apply. But then you can then go and do something like Formula One. But some people don't want to do Formula One. They might just be quite happy staying at their local circuit. So as I say, my local circuit's Alton Park. So I could go literally and just do which events I wanted to at Alton. As it is, I go to different circuits as well. So you can pick and choose, you can mix and match. If you are away on holiday up in Scotland and you fancy an event at Knockhill while you're there, you know, you can build it into different things that you're doing. As it's all voluntary, you're not paid to go and do these events, so it's what you can afford in terms of travel or staying over or whatever. So hence some people do just stick to their local circuit, because that's the cheapest way of doing it. But there's, depending on where you are, there could be 10-15 events a year at that circuit or more. Some circuits have a lot more than that number of events.
And also, I think that the fact that you can stay at your local circuits shouldn't be looked at as if that's not as exciting and fun as doing something like Formula One. Because I know when I've spoken to multiple people across the industry, so many people actually stress that Formula One is often not as engaging when you're actually in it, because it's a lot more structured and you're a lot more limited in how involved you can get and how much hands-on experience you might pick up initially. Whereas starting at your local track, obviously, you know, it's a lot more hands-on. You're going to get to network a lot more easily with the people around you. You're going to get to make some great connections, and often you're going to end up potentially working and helping the people that are on their journey into Formula One or the other top levels of motorsport anyway, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, because most events that run in the UK are run with amateur drivers. So during the week, they're working, saving their money to look after their car that they are then going to take racing at the weekend. So same as us volunteers, we have a day job during the week and we're motorsport at the weekend. And then you see certain individuals go up the ranks. So just to name one, Lando Norris, I saw him in Ginetta Juniors. That's where he started. My husband actually saw him testing in Ginetta Juniors, you know, before he'd even actually got that seat in that car. And then we might see drivers who end up in Formula One at those lower levels, and you might be able to say, oh, that's the next Lewis Hamilton. You know, it's like, oh, he's pretty good, you know. And if you go often enough, or if you follow certain championships or clubs, you'll see those drivers, and you'll see, and oh, look, he's progressed, he's moved from that championship to that championship, and actually he's quite good, you know. So really interesting. And I think because a lot of the club events are, as I say, have got amateur drivers, they're there to have a good time. They're there to enjoy motorsport. And we as volunteers, that's why we're there. I don't particularly want to go and see cars crashing into each other, because that means I'm probably going to have to do something. Whereas I would much rather see a great battle between cars racing, you know, for position, and then you think, gosh, that guy's a solicitor, and that guy works in a bank, and you know, that's what they do as a day job. But at the weekend, here they are racing their pride and joy and doing their best to get from 8th place to 7th place, because that means they've actually got their class win rather than necessarily winning the race. They've won their class. And it's all of those battles that you see going along. So that's what I love, is just seeing those drivers, seeing their enthusiasm, them scraping around in the paddock because they've had a bit of a problem during qualifying, and seeing if somebody's got a spare something that they can attach to the car. As I'm not mechanical, we spoke about that before, I'm certainly not mechanical, but they might, you know, they'll help each other out. The different championships, the different clubs will help each other out, and it is a big family. I think, and across the board. So if, say, as a marshal, we've seen somebody have a bit of an incident in the morning, maybe they just had a really bad practice, maybe they just broke down, they just stopped out on circuit, and you get the opportunity at lunchtime to call in at the paddock, and you have a wander around. You say, oh, have you fixed your car? You know, where did you end up qualifying? Right, we'll wave at you when you go past. And all of that, you just kind of like then just start having those conversations with people, and that builds the network. Because then next time they come back, they go, oh, you know, you did really well, and you finished really well in that session, and those kind of conversations start up as well.
We have 2 questions that are specifically related to marshalling that I would love you to answer. So Sophie has asked, do you need any qualifications at all to volunteer as a marshal, or can, you know, you can just volunteer just with the interest and the passion?
Absolutely not. I as I say, I had nothing. I'm not mechanically trained at all. As I was trained to be an accountant at the time. That's not what I do now, but that's what I was training to be, which doesn't particularly help with volunteering. So no training beforehand required, no particular qualifications. Training is given, so you don't have to start with training, but there are training sessions that happen, and most importantly, I would say, is gaining that experience by being out there and in a team of people who will show you what to do, and what you need to do and what you need to be aware of, and that's how you'll learn.
Perfect. Oops, sorry, there's some feedback there. Another question that we had sent in is from somebody who said, I've just entered Formula Woman as a complete novice and I help with marshalling. Do you have any advice? What would be your advice for someone just starting out?
In terms of marshalling, I would say try out lots of different things. So try out different events, try out different clubs, because you might find certain things that you like, that you just are interested. I'm not the biggest single-seater fan. So I have done Formula One, but I'm not the biggest single-seater fan. I would much rather look at historic cars and big V8 engines, noisy things. They're the ones that I really love doing. So classic touring cars, classic sports cars, that GTs, those kind of cars are my thing. So I will pick and choose which events I want to do based on what I know I'm going to see racing. So I think that's the key, is do lots of different things, try them out, try different places. If you can, obviously, if you can afford to go, because you'll be with different people, you'll get a different insight, you'll see different things happening, you'll get so much experience, and that you can then pass on to other people as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nadine. I'm going to now switch over to Sue, who is also clerk of the course. Now, Sue, I would like you to start by telling us a bit more about your journey into the role as well, because as we've seen across the board here, everyone's had a slightly different journey. Some people have gone into their role through a completely different path to somebody else. So can you talk us through what led you up to the volunteering role that you're in, and what really first sparked the interest in motorsport?
Do I have to start at the very beginning?
Please do.
Oh, very weirdly, I started as a dancer and then a beauty therapist, which bears no resemblance to where I am right now, none whatsoever. But I was taken at 14 to watch stock car racing, which for those that don't know, can also be called bangers. It's just kind of quite the most basic level motorsport around a dirt track with lots of mud and hot smelling exhausts, and just gorgeous. So I actually did that at 14, just for like a few events. I'm not quite sure how I was allowed to go, because it was always very late coming home, but I was. And then there was nothing. But after I'd learned to drive, I then asked my mother if she, only my mother, because she worked in a big office. My father was a postmaster, so he wouldn't have known. If she knew of any like clubs locally that had anything to do with motorsports. So she found out that there was one just a mile or so down the road. And then I just drove there and turned up and walked in. And it was a room full of around 140, 150 people, all crowded around the bar. And it was kind of a daunting experience, I have to say. We just walked up to the bar, ordered a drink, and stood there and wondered what I was going to do next. And very happily, somebody started to talk to me. And exactly like everybody else has said, what a gorgeous group of people, you know, instantly made to feel welcome. What are you doing here? How have you found out about us? What do you know? And of course, I knew nothing, absolutely nothing, except for stock cars. I mean, I really had no clue. And they were just wonderful. So that welcome was just phenomenal, right back in 1970 something. So a long time ago, but absolutely great. And then from there, I just started to volunteer, and mostly nothing to do with what the rest of the guys have been talking about, but rally. So that was it for me. Night rallies, scatter rallies, auto tests, and actual rallies. So that's where I started. And with the exception of a radio operator, I now know I've done every role on a rally. So no, forgive me, Chloe, I haven't been a scrutineer, but I have done noise testing. So that's a simple one that you need no engineering experience for, just the basic knowledge and competence. So, but that side of the sport is very different, and loved it. And almost on the first year, watched a World Rally Championship event, Lombard RAC Rally, and saw a female going around before the competitors in a car. And I said, well, what's she doing? What's that woman doing? And they said, oh, that's a safety car. And I said, I want to do that. Took me 20 years of volunteering, but I did it. And now I train people who are in safety cars. So if you're really determined and you love it, it doesn't matter where you begin.
And that's exactly why I asked you to start at the very beginning, because I think it's so important. We often get people on the Facebook page who say, you know, I'm doing something completely unrelated, but this is my passion. Can I make it in? Is it a possibility? And of course it is a possibility. I mean, I work in a completely unrelated field alongside the work I do within Formula One as well. And as long as the passion's there, as long as the hard work is there, why wouldn't it be possible? I just feel like, don't doubt yourself, don't shut yourself off. If this is what you're passionate about, go after it. But going back to you and your volunteering role rather than me, what would you say is maybe, or are maybe, some of the common misconceptions of your volunteering role as clerk of the course, or some of the more interesting things that people maybe don't know that you do?
I think some of the things, because I mean, working as a clerk of the course in rally is quite different to working as a clerk of the course in race. Like, there's a massive difference. In race, you turn up at a venue, somebody's already made sure it's safe, it has a permit, somebody goes and checks that everything is correct. You turn up and you have is everything okay? Yes, fine. Have all the marshals turned up? Yes, fine. I'm sorry, Dot, that is oversimplifying. Forgive me, and I know it is oversimplifying. But then you manage each event, and there are a number of different events, including practice throughout the day, that you've got to be on top of. In rally, as a clerk of the course, you start maybe 12 months in advance for a big event, or maybe 6 months in advance for a smaller event. And you have to go out and find the venues. You have to decide how you're going to set them up in a safe way. You have to make sure there's somewhere for spectators to stand. You've got to decide where people are going to carry out their servicing and repair work, and where they're going to stop for fuel on the way around. You have to plan every single thing. My honest belief is that rallying, particularly where there are different venues, multiple venues throughout an event, is the most complex sport in the world, because there are so many aspects to it, not just the competitors, but all of the service crew and the mechanics and the marshals. So, for instance, on Wales Rally GB, which is the World Rally Championship that, you know, hopefully we'll get back quite soon, but it's just on a bit of a pause at the moment. But we would have anything up to 2,000 marshals as volunteers supporting us on that event. And they all need to be trained to the right standard. They all need to be supplied with all the right information and, you know, maps of how to get to where they're going, what time they've got to be there. And all that ultimately has to be delegated from the clerk of the course to a number of different people. So the role of the clerk of the course is huge. It is management, as Dot so rightly says, but really high level.
And we've had a few different questions coming in saying, how do you actually initially find these opportunities to get into volunteering? So for the people that are on the call that might be completely inspired, and I'm sure they will be after listening to you all, where would you point them for resources and information so that they can actually get involved and take that step into volunteering in whichever area?
There are a couple of different ways. I'm going to suggest two easy ones, and we'll also put something, either Jenny will probably put something in the post-webinar notes. Mm-hmm. But one of the first ones you can do, and I know Nadine will step in and give me the correct email address, and we'll add that into, and the web address, and we'll add that into the apps, the post-event information as well. But you can volunteer through a number of clubs. There are 17 clubs in the UK that are specifically for marshals, and there are actually 620 other motor clubs spread across the whole of the UK, Jersey, Guernsey, Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man, every part of Scotland. So if you visited the Motorsport UK website and you can click on Get Started, that's a really good place to go, and that will give you all sorts of different disciplines. You know, we do have many, and each club will run some local ones that you can go to, and you can stand on the side and you can watch, get a feel for what's going on before you say, please may I. You know, you can kind of settle first, or you can turn up and do admin roles. I was an assistant secretary of the meeting before I became an international clerk of the course. It was a fairly stupendous step from one to the other, but it doesn't matter what the job title is, you can just do it. So don't think that any job is less than any other. Every single one is vital. So, you know, consider all of those things. But as Nadine says, there are things called taster days. Certainly they exist for marshals, but we are introducing them for officials. And in other words, these are people like timekeepers, scrutineers, people who work on the rescue units and do some of the, I won't say medical because they are qualified doctors or paramedics, but people who support in any extrication or when the cars have gone off, how they actually recover the car back into the service area or the paddock or wherever. And then roles like being a steward, as Cheryl is, and clerks of the course, as Dot and I are. You know, there are proper training programs for that, and we will take people through. So going to the Taster Days is a good one.
There you have it. That's very useful information. As Sue has said, we will of course send out this in more detail in the post-session email, so you guys will have all of the necessary information and can pursue whatever takes your fancy. We've had a question come in from Helen, who has asked, for volunteering, can all members of a family get involved at any age, i.e. mums, dads and young people? So
yes. For marshalling, it's from the 11th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part. It's not possible at every single venue. Some of the race circuits, for instance, have a no under 18s policy. So each venue would be slightly different. So you can't just do it everywhere. But if we're going to talk about some of the off-road events, which Chloe was talking about earlier, cross-country particularly, and trialing, auto tests, club events, every member of the family will be there. Sometimes they'll compete. Then, 10 minutes later, they'll be marshalling. And it is a huge family. And on some of them, not all, but certainly not a race circuit, do not ever take your dog. But on some of the other more, what we would call a grassroots sport, you as long as they're on leads, you can take children, pets, anything. It is a proper family environment.
I just
Family
jump
friendly.
in there as well.
Yes,
and say that
please.
if as a family environment, it can be a family environment, there are certain roles that children can't do. But for example, if you're helping out with administration in race control or event administration, you can have your child with you, and they could be helping collate paperwork and things like that. So there'll always be something to have that family environment. I've been to many events where the families have been involved, and the mum's doing administration and the father's the clerk of the course. So absolutely. And I think the other thing I want to make sure we say is, certain roles, when people go to events and they start looking, maybe taster events, not necessarily so much on the marshalling side, but you don't have to start marshalling, there's many other avenues you can go through, is don't be put off by, being surrounded by older males, which is predominantly what we will see, because everybody will be welcome, and there will be people that will help and support to help you get to where you want to do.
And just two things for me. My daughter used to come. I ran a training event in a forest, and she was still wearing a nappy. She came with me, and while I was delivering the training, she was crawling around on the floor perfectly happily. And she came to many events and just sat quietly. But she says that one of the reasons she can add things up in her head and subtract is because she did results on rallies and sat in the car with me and doing the results, and then actually sat and assisted the results team afterwards. So, I think that's really a very important part of what it's about. But the second thing I want to say is, if you are volunteering, no matter what age, no matter what you're doing, always remember to include it on any CV you write for a job, because that experience, that team working, those skills, that competence, the sheer fact that you're prepared to go out and volunteer will give you so many extra points when you actually apply for a job. So please look at it in a professional sense, even when it's not related to the role you're actually applying for. It's so helpful when ask Chloe, who now actually works in the industry. It wouldn't have mattered though. Whatever you do, it will help with job applications.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I know that whenever I have job applications, they always ask what extracurricular you can do, what your extracurricular you do. And I've also been on the other side where I've been interviewing people and reviewing CVs, and it is something that you look at because it's a differentiating factor. One of the questions that we had in, which actually links quite nicely to what we were just talking about, and I'm going to bring you back in, Dot, seeing as we're getting to the end of the session. Somebody has actually asked, how can we encourage more female volunteers of all ages? So from your experience, Dot, what would you say we could do as a community? as Motorsport UK to encourage more ladies of all different ages to get involved?
I think first and foremost, it's all about publicity. If people don't see you, people won't know that people like you do what you're doing. So it's more, it's more about publicity and speaking about what we do. Telling people, shouting from the rooftops what we do. But because if you don't tell people, people won't know.
Absolutely. People need to see people like themselves in the positions to believe it's achievable and attainable. And that's something I think that's really coming to the forefront over recent years as well within the motorsport industry across all fronts, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's sexual orientation, etc. And that's why sessions like this are amazing, because we have all you wonderful ladies who can demonstrate that it's perfectly possible and there is a place for all of us within this sport, and especially in volunteering. Nadine, I want to bring you back in as well. We've had a question from Ivana who has asked, anyone can jump in as well also afterwards by all means, what volunteering job would be the most involved in mechanical and engineering sides where you can learn about them if that is their interest? Are there any specific volunteering roles that any of you ladies might cover that you feel are especially suited to someone who might want to brush up on that side of things?
So I would say the scrutineering probably, and unfortunately we've lost Chloe. So I would definitely say it's the scrutineering side of things for the mechanical aspects.
That links nicely to another question we have then, which Sophie has asked whether it would be okay to connect with you ladies on LinkedIn afterwards, should she have any other questions, or is there somewhere on the Motorsport UK website that people can channel questions or queries that they might have about the volunteering roles that you guys offer?
I would say yes to LinkedIn for most of us, but also using the Facebook community group. I think that would be a very good way, and then Jenny would channel them out accordingly. There was one question about medical rescue safety, which we haven't particularly covered, because in some respects not all of those roles are quite in the same volunteering capacity, in that the professionals are the doctors and paramedics, and they kind of come at this in a different way, although they certainly don't always get their full daily rate, that is for sure. But from a rescue or recovery perspective, then there is a trainee pathway for them, exactly the same as there is for a clerk or a steward, and no previous experience is required. So that journey is exactly the same. You have a training program, work through it, and it's brilliant.
Perfect. Now we are approaching time. At one point that I will also say on the LinkedIn thing, and this doesn't just apply to the ladies on this call, but this is more broadly for anyone who might be reaching out and trying to network and make connections with people in the industry. Always just bear in mind that people are very busy, and always approach respectfully and politely when you're asking for advice or guidance, because everyone's swamped. And I know it's easy to feel like you really need to get your question, you really need to get a response, but just a word of advice: always be polite, always be respectful. It will end up much better, and you're much more likely to get a response. And we are literally 1 minute to go. So I just want to check if there's anything that any of you ladies would really like to add or shout out before we wrap things up about your role or about volunteering, or any inspirational words that you might want to share. And if not, then we'll just close things out. But
I think all I would say is, if you think you could do it, just do it.
There we have it. Cheryl?
Don't be put off by being young. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be old to be in one of the positions.
And I would say you don't have to be mechanically minded to enjoy motorsport at all.
Exactly. I would agree with that one.
Look at that. Unanimous advice there. Brilliant. Now we've hit 7:30, so we're on time, and I don't want to hold anyone up from the evening much longer. But once again, thank you all for joining us. People that have joined to listen and to ask your questions, thank you so much. All of you lovely ladies who have sat with us for the last hour sharing your experiences and your insights, we appreciate it so, so much. Thank you for being incredible guests. As we've already mentioned, we will send out further details of how you can get involved, resources, links, useful tips, etc. in a email after this session. It will probably come out tomorrow from Motorsport UK. If you're not already members of the Girls on Track UK Facebook page, you need to head over there and join that right now. Do not delay any longer. I can't explain to you how brilliant it is. It's actually been a big factor in getting me to where I am now, and doing these sessions and working with Autosport and things like that. It makes such a difference, and you'll find so many like-minded individuals. So please, please don't miss out. And I hope that you all enjoyed the session. There will be more sessions, of course, hosted by Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK. Let us know what else you want to see so that we can try and arrange things that are particularly interesting to you. And fingers crossed, it won't be long until we can also do some in-person events. But in the meantime, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days, evenings, wherever you may be. And thank you all once again for spending this evening with us.